Good evening and welcome to the January 9, 2019 Civil Service Commission meeting. May I have roll call, please?
Commissioner Manukian?
Here.
Commissioner Gazarian?
Here.
Commissioner McCarley?
Here.
Commissioner Devine?
Here.
Chair Abkarian.
Here. What's next?
Minutes for the meeting of December 12, 2018.
Move to approve, dispense with reading.
Second.
Move to approve second. Maybe have roll call, please?
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Gazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Abkarian.
Yes. What's next?
Oral communications.
I have one card here from Ignacio Savidera. Yeah, come up, please. Is it any item, or is it an item that's related in the agenda today?
No, it's a separate item.
Okay, go ahead, sir, please.
So, good evening.
Just your name, please.
Ignacio Saavedra.
Okay.
And I wanted to discuss some issues. I'm a City of Glendale employee for 20 years. And I don't know if this is the right platform to discuss city issues, but in the past I have written an email to Art Divine and Gauro Kazarian. I didn't get a response back, so I was wondering if I
Why don't you
could...
tell us, we have 3 minutes, so why don't you tell us what your issue is?
Oh, the issue is regarding my department, integrated waste, and it's regarding open promotional examination and issues, ongoing issues in our department, as well as issues regarding our GCA, our bargaining agreement. So it's just several issues that would require more than 5 minutes. And I have...
Well, why don't you start, and we'll see what we can do. We want to give you enough time to speak, but we just can't give you all the day. So just get started, and we'll see where it finishes.
I have brought it up to the attention of upper management that the GCA is not following the bylaws, and we actually petitioned for a different bargaining group, and we were denied. So that's just one of the issues. The second issue is as far as our department, there was an audit that was done, and there was a timeline given about 2 years, and some of the audit issues have not been completed. And as far as the open promotional items, I know that people get promoted based on merit. I've been called a wetback by a coworker who got promoted, and I've been denied in many of the openings that I have filed for. There was an investigation regarding the comment made, and it was found that it was a comment that was made. And I have questions regarding promotional, the way that, they're hiring employees based on promotional in my department. So I can't speak for the rest of the city, but these are, an item that I think I would, I don't know how else to reach you guys. Like I said, I've reached out to Art and to Garo in an email, and I never got a response. This was...
I'm sorry, but I have not gotten an email from you, sir, because I would remember an email of this nature, but nevertheless.
Okay, so...
Just so you would know, the emails that the city has for us doesn't forward to us.
No,
and we hardly ever, I don't think that I know what's in it, to be very honest with you.
You know what, I apologize. I don't know if it was you, Garo, or was Albert. Are you the attorney?
I am the attorney.
Yes, and it was to
They're
you.
all attorneys.
Oh.
Sorry.
I tried to, I tried to get in contact with all of you guys, but I found 2 emails through the city, which was, I know one was Art, the other one, I don't know who it is. But I do have a record of that.
Going to the city attorney's office, is it something that are you claiming that there's discrimination in your department?
Discrimination, harassment, Matt Dole is aware of this. I brought this up to his attention. Yasmin, John T., Rubik, Ochoa. We've had lengthy discussions and investigations, and it's still ongoing.
What are you asking this commission to do, sir?
Well, I'm asking for your time. As far as a platform where we can, I can get an appointment with you guys and speak. I can present everything that I have and, just,
Well, just so you would know, Mr. Saavedra, did I say that, Saavedra?
yes, Saavedra.
Mr. Saavedra, we are an appeal body. That means that once you go through the city processes, and once you go through the city process and you're unhappy at that point from a decision made by the city manager, then at that point, you can appeal that decision to our office, to us, and we can maybe have some kind of a hearing in reference to what you just mentioned. Until you go through that process, I don't think we have an independent, we've talked about this actually, we don't have an independent investigative powers as to the Civil Service Commission. I mean, we do, but we don't. That means that you first have to go through the processes, and if you're denied at that point, your time, your rights as far as you're concerned, and you believe it relates to a discrimination that discriminates you personally, at that point, once that decision comes down, you can appeal that decision, and we can then take a look at that decision at that point.
There has, and I'm in litigation with the city as well, so I've been, bringing up issues since 2015, so.
I'm just saying that the administrative portion of it and the city manager and the assistant city manager have to be given a chance to review the information to see if the information is valid or invalid, regardless of your lawsuit.
No, I understand.
And if you haven't done that, I encourage you to do that. Once you go through the process and you have a decision, if you disagree with that decision, then you can appeal that decision to our body, and then we can then go in and see if that's your rights that are being jeopardized is something that we can look at or not. But at this point, because we haven't really had a chance to, the city hasn't had a chance to do the administrative and go through the investigation, see what you're talking about, I don't want to make any decision or any comments relating to the issue you just mentioned.
There have been issues that have been brought up. We're going back 2015. I haven't received a follow-up on some of those issues. So what length of time is enough?
Did I hear correctly? You said you were in litigation with the city?
Yes.
Okay.
But not on every item. But
I would strongly advise at this stage to have the legal counsel continue this dialogue.
Well, I just have to say that I'm not familiar with this case specifically, but as the chair described, there is a process that it is part of your recourse to address, to send communications to the Civil Service Commission, but independently they are unable to act. So if there is, if you do feel that that your complaints were not heard, I would strongly encourage you to contact the chief examiner and submit your complaint through that process. There are time frames that are outlined within the civil service rules, so it's not an indefinite no response, but there are response period times in there. But there is a process that's set forth. I would encourage you to contact Mr. Doyle to seek a recourse.
Send a written communication this way, then you have some proof that when you send it registered or give it to them or something like that.
yeah, I have plenty of emails, and litigation is on workers' comp.
Okay, yeah, that has nothing to do with this. Again, what I can encourage you is to go ahead and send a communication requesting that your grievance is looked at. Once they have looked at it, once they investigated once they finish everything, you might be satisfied with their decision, then there would be no need to come to us. If you're not satisfied at that point, then you would request that decision be appealed to the Civil Service Commission. Then at that point, we will come in and review what the city has already investigated and tell you if it's right or wrong.
So for issues that I brought up that have not been followed up, do I take the same recourse?
I would say that to put them all in writing and send it to Mr. Doyle, and I'm sure Mr. Doyle will be more than happy to acknowledge and comply with your request of doing some investigation on your claims.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to begin a dialogue here because I know this item hasn't been agendized, but I'm well aware of many of the issues that Mr. Saavedra has raised. They've been addressed often, and we have an internal investigation process which has been employed many times on complaints raised by this individual.
And what's the next step if, once the investigation is finalized and he still believes that there's an issue, does he then request an appeal with the Civil Service Commission? through an attorney or
Mr.
himself?
Chair, I would say no. It really depends upon the nature of whatever the concern he's raised, but he's brought up issues relative to representation by the GCA and his, dissatisfaction with them. Many of his concerns relate to the equipment provided at Integrated Waste.
My understanding, he said somebody called him a wetbag and somebody is discriminating against him. If there's an investigation and that investigation has a conclusion and that conclusion is not satisfactory to him on that particular issue, he should be able to then appeal that to the Civil Service Commission, then we should have a hearing on that.
Mr. Chair, all I'll say is that the item that you just referenced was investigated and it was addressed with the individuals involved. And
So they were disciplined in court? Yeah, or
We don't wanna-
one way or the
we
other?
can't discuss that.
It was responded, it was responded to.
It was addressed. It was addressed, and this was several years ago.
Yes.
Again, if this gentleman was not satisfied with that conclusion, does he have the right to appeal that grievance or that problem to the Civil Service Commission? I'll ask our attorney and our...
I believe in this particular situation, and again, we can't speak to the specifics just because I'm hearing about it for the first time, but depending on the nature, as Mr. Doyle said, he could either pursue a private cause of action, and if the right arises, then appeal to the Civil Service Commission. In this particular instance, it sounds like the city addressed the issue with the employees that were involved, and if the speaker here is unsatisfied with that response, that may be it for him at this point. He may choose to consult a private attorney with regard to any discriminatory feelings that
Now, hold on
he
one second.
still has, but that's not something that we would address
Let's
here.
make sure we understand. I mean, I agreed that we don't have a right to investigate. I basically said that this is an appeal decision where if an issue comes up, somebody believes their job is in danger, and the job has a vesting right, and somebody believes that they're being discriminated against, and they've gone through the process and they have some decision, and that decision is not satisfactory, they have every right to appeal to the Civil Service Commission, and I don't think that they should be precluded from being, they shouldn't be told just go and file a lawsuit against the city. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. That's what the investigation, I agreed with your decision on your report on this, but my understanding was that if there's a vesting interest and there's a decision that affects the employee's opportunity to work and somehow his job is threatened, that decision, after they go through the administrative process, is 100% appealable. I'm not sure if this gentleman's claim is valid or invalid. I have no idea. But his grievance, where he believes that his vested interest in his job is in jeopardy, should definitely be able to appeal it to the Civil Service Commission. Sir, I will tell you, go ahead and appeal it to the Civil Service Commission, and if somebody doesn't get it to us, then we'll work that out.
Thank you, I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
sir. Anyone else? Okay, no one else on the oral communication. What's next?
Recruitment and examination report.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is the monthly report of our recruitment and examination processes, showing all recruitment activity of the positions, the department, the filing period, dates of the exam. As you can see, continued heavy recruitment activity, and this is not a whole lot of change since last month, and kind of hard to, over the holidays, kind of hard to get a lot of the recruitments cleared out, particularly the last couple of weeks of December. But again, a good indication of our recruitment activity. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. It's a note and file item.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Any questions? No questions. What I had asked my colleagues is that item number 6 be moved to after item number 10. And I've talked to you, and you said it was okay. I didn't talk to anyone else. So anyone have any issues with item number 6 being removed to after item number 10?
No problem.
No questions? Okay. What's next?
Eligible list established.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, these are the eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting. As I previously stated, in the month of December, the activity is not going to be as heavy as previously, so thus we only have a small number of lists that have been established, 3. We have one open process with over 200 applications, and then 2 promotional examination processes. Again, this is a note and file item. However, if you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Any questions? No questions? What's next?
Class specification for approval, librarian series.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a revision of the series for the library department series. It's being addressed or being revised. Really 2 factors involved in this. The first being that it's been almost 15 years since this has been addressed or revised. And additionally, there's a couple of changes to the minimum requirements that are being proposed by the Library Arts and Culture Department. First, it would involve the classification within the series called library assistant. Formerly, this position required a few years of college and 3 years of library experience, and it's being proposed to reduce that to 1 year. And then the librarian position itself, this is sort of the main classification found within all of our libraries. This is a job that requires a Master of Library Science degree. And in the past, there was really no experience requirement made of this position. Theoretically, somebody could graduate library school, get it, become eligible for one of these jobs and be hired. Again, the department's proposing that we make a 1-year requirement. Realistically, most of your best candidates will have some experience, either part-time work in a library setting before we end up hiring them as a librarian. And a lot of, between those 2 classifications, it could help prepare somebody for the library series by going first as an assistant to the librarian. And a lot of folks do that as they're going to school and learning the profession.
Did you say librarian school?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
So, again, this is designed to address hopefully career development and provide a better career path. You'll also see there's an elimination within the series of something called student librarian. This is a classification I don't believe has been used for many, many years, and so that's being proposed as sort of a cleanup item. So with that, we have staff here to address any questions you may have.
Yes.
We have individuals from the library as well. So.
Mr. McCarty?
Mr. Chair, I would be interested in comments from the senior library staff on the reasoning behind the requirement for a minimum of 1 year experience to enter service as a library assistant.
Let's talk to whoever is the...
So this is Nikki Winslow, who's our Assistant Director of Library Arts and Culture.
Good evening, Chair, Commission. In our last librarian recruitment, which we did about 1.5 years ago, we had almost 100 people apply with degrees, and it was very difficult to limit the selection pool based on the fact that we don't have an experience requirement. So in addition to that, the library assistant position oftentimes is hired as an hourly position, and there's a 3-year requirement to be able to promote some of our hourly staff or even full-time staff that are trying to move into librarian position. So as a result, we found that not only that, but the librarian comes into a department oftentimes as like a lead person. And if you bring them in to be like the adjunct or person in charge when the supervisor's not there and they don't have any experience working in a public library setting, it's difficult for them to be the person that the other staff lean to for, guidance, supervision, and things like that. So, and as Matt mentioned, or Mr. Doyle mentioned, it is kind of like a progressively, you move from an hourly person that comes in maybe in circulation, you get a bachelor's degree, then move into library school. So oftentimes the requirement for some library experience is very relevant, especially as they're coming in at kind of a higher level that's going to oversee staff when supervisors aren't present. Does that make sense?
That answer your question, Ms. McCarty?
It's, so OJT would not assist in enabling one of these entrants to gain the ability to service the public at your libraries?
I don't understand the question.
On-the-job training,
Okay.
which is
I didn't even understand what
I'm
that was.
sorry, OJT, on-the-job training, which is basically you bring that person into the employ of the city without the requirement that you are now asking us to approve for a year experience. And I would assume that over the course of time, that somebody who has been brought into service with the city would acquire, perhaps quite rapidly, the ability to satisfy the minimum requirements mandated for a library assistant. I'm just uncomfortable, quite frankly, with imposing additional requirements for entry-level positions, because the next question that follows is, all right, we have a library assistant. Where does such an individual acquire that type of experience? Does that mean that they have to have served in the Burbank Library? Does that mean that they have acquired this experience from part-time work at the University of UCLA and its library school? The mere request for some determinant, some additional marker for determining whether or not this candidate is suitable for employment, you're basically saying, okay, we have all these candidates who come before us with a bachelor's degree, and now in order to discriminate, and that's not in terms of an unlawful discrimination, but a discrimination for the purpose of making a selection, you're saying that I need this one-year experience. That cuts down the number of individuals to whom you have to look seriously for their qualifications. Has there ever been a problem without this mandated experience? Or is this something, this is a nice to have?
No, like I said, I think you bring a librarian into a department, and if you read through the description, they're tasked with being the person in charge of the department when the supervisor isn't present. So if they don't have a background and a strong background working in a public library setting, it's hard for them to oversee the staff of people with a lot more experience underneath them.
And I understand that, and I don't want to prolong this because the issue that came before us is far more challenging. But I would assume that as a graduate of an accredited library school, that there are intern requirements. And those would you accept an internship at UCLA in that library program that mandates a certain number of hours in order to gain the degree as representing the experience that you're seeking?
We would accept volunteer time. We'd accept internship time if they volunteered at a library, if they worked in a similar setting that was applicable towards what we're doing, then yes. Like we've had people that have volunteered in school libraries as they were going through high school or things like that. So it's just, in my experience, I've been working in public libraries for almost 18 years.
Certainly.
The librarians that come in with a background, be it in children's or adult services or whatever the capacity that we're looking for, they're far more successful in the position. And I do think they can act as a leader in the department that they're working in or the building because of their background in that. And I do find that when I read the librarian series, I've been here almost 2 years. I moved here from Las Vegas where I worked for almost 16 years in that library system, which I do believe there's a requirement for experience. Anyway, that's besides the point. The library assistant, which was, like I said, we typically hire them hourly, had a 3-year requirement of working in a library setting. And then that's also can be considered an entry-level position. So we're just trying to find equity in providing a pipeline for the people that, because you'll meet a lot of our employees that, like one of them we just promoted as a library supervisor that started for us as a GYA worker in high school. She became a page, She then moved into CSA, or customer service assistant. So you find that this does act as a pipeline and a professional development opportunity.
Well, there are no legal issues involved, and as a matter of course, my view is that I defer to management on these decisions with respect to what's appropriate in the staffing requirements. So this was just a matter of inquiry, and my view of things across the entirety of the employment in the city, that we should offer a lot more opportunities to young people without the necessity of further experience requirements. And that is my statement, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments?
I just want to know what a library school is.
Library school?
Librarian school? There's actually a school?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there's master's degree programs for library and
Okay, so
information science.
Okay. Thank you.
I move for approval.
Second.
Move in second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Menuchyan,
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarian,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley,
Yes.
Commissioner Devine,
Yes.
Chair Karian.
Yes, what's next?
Job bulletin for approval, building repairer.
Still.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a job bulletin for approval. The previous item was a specification. The position is building repair, and this is a sort of a general tradesperson who does maintenance and repair work at City Hall and outlying facilities. The reason this is coming before you is that this job previously was recruited for on a promotional basis, and in this circumstance, the department believes that the city would benefit from opening this filing to broaden the candidate pool to some degree and do a open recruitment process. The position does require several years, I believe it's 4 years in several of the building trades, and really the best candidates for this position are those who know how to paint, know how to do a little plumbing, electrical work, and ultimately that's what we're looking for. We probably will get a lot of applicants from the construction trades, but I think we're of the belief that we'd get some really strong candidates if we broaden the candidate pool to an open recruitment. So for that reason, the request is being made for an open bulletin.
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve this particular modification to the requirements for building repair. It's consistent with my view that we should open up opportunities to members of the public to the extent that we're able.
Any, one second, any discussion? Move in a second. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Menuchyan,
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarian,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley,
Yes.
Commissioner Devine,
Yes.
Chair Karian.
Yes. What's next?
Public hearing, amendments to civil service rules and regulations.
Okay, we open the public hearing. Any cards? Anyone wants to speak on this particular item? No one here to speak. Mr. Doyle? Go on, sorry.
You're right, received the report.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, at the commission's direction, over a year ago, we began a process of addressing revisions and update to the existing civil service rules and regulations. The commission directed staff to come up with some ideas and thoughts for modernizing and updating the rules document. In addition to that, Chair Karian was quite involved in proposing some changes and modifications to the rules. And as a result, over the course of this past year, 2018, and I think it occurred at several meetings, we had items that were brought to the commission for consideration. And I think the initial go-around, I brought about 15 or 16 items, and several of those were accepted, others were rejected, and some other ideas came up along the way. But at this point, I think towards the end of the year, 2018, we did settle upon a total of 13 recommended amendments to these rules. Following that commission direction, I am required also to meet and confer with our employee associations under the law. And I've done so over the course of November of 2018. I did meet with all 5 employee associations, and we went through each of the 13 proposed amendments to the rules and had a good dialogue, a lot of questions, a lot of feedback, back and forth. Ultimately, The employee associations concurred with pretty much all of these recommendations. There are 3 where they had suggestions on other methods of handling those specific amendments, and we can certainly talk about those. By the way, the employee associations were invited here this evening, and I don't see a lot of them here, but the invitation did go out. I wanted the commission to know that. At this point, we're ready to present these amendments for commission approval. The process would be, again, the commission adopting proposed recommendations for these amendments, and assuming there aren't any significant differences that remain between what the commission is directing me to do and any feelings that the employee associations may have, I will then take this item to the city council for final adoption, and therefore that would complete the process of amending the rules. The report before you is relatively brief, simply describing the process that's occurred over the past year. Exhibit 1 is a summary of each of the 13 amendments, and then Exhibit 2 is the actual document itself, which highlights the proposed changes. With that, I'll leave it to the commission to, Mr. Chair, however you want to propose to proceed with this item.
There's Mr. Gazarian, Commissioner Gazarian.
Mr. Doyle, I have a question. I direct your attention to page 24, which is page 2 of the initial document on this agenda item. Number 5, Rule 5, Section 9, page 23.
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes.
So temporary appointments, consideration of an amendment to require commission approval for temporary appointments in excess of 6 months. This commission's action was an approval by acclamation a year ago.
Correct.
I note the employee bargaining groups are recommending to leave as is or have commission noticed if appointment exceeds 6 months. It seems to be saying exactly that which we approved by acclamation. Am I missing something? Because
It has to come in front of the Civil Service Commission, and the Civil Service Commission approves if it could be past 6 months.
Extension.
This just says give you notice. That's all they do. They give us notice, but the actual extension was given by Matt Doyle or whoever is in that.
That's correct. That's the current.
That's the current.
The request
They
to
just
come
give us
in
notice instead of giving an
administratively.
approval.
The commission recommended that it come for the commission for approval.
For approval.
The associations, again, offered the suggestion that it either.
I see, but you know, the legal interpretation of the word notice means when you notice a body of something, you also have to give that body an opportunity to be heard as to that something. So when it says recommend to leave as is, or have commission noticed if appointment exceeds 6 months, so you come and tell the commission, by the way, that appointment is going to exceed 6 months, you give me notice, I then...
You can't say no.
Well, no, you give me notice, I have an opportunity to be heard as to whether or not that's appropriate. So maybe the word is tripping me up a bit.
Yeah. Let me just...
Mr. Chair, maybe the word is tripping you up, and I'm not a lawyer, so when I say the word...
Because to me, notice and opportunity go hand in hand.
Commissioner Gazarian, let me just tell you what, this is one that was recommendation by me. So before I hear you, sir, legally, we can only give a temporary appointment for 6 months, and then we can then add to it and go past a particular time. I really feel comfortable with commission approving anything past 6 months. Anything up to 6 months, it's up to the department.
That's fine.
They want to do whatever they want to do. I don't have any issues whatsoever. But anything past 6 months must be approved by the Civil Service Commission prior to anyone being appointed more than 6 months. I appreciate the Employee Association input, but my recommendation of having commission approve anything past 6 months hasn't changed, with all due respect to the recommendation.
Okay. All right, so we're talking about the same thing.
Yes.
I want to hear from my colleague, Commissioner McCarley, see
I-
where he's at.
interest is to push forward. We had the opportunity, all of us participated, I believe, in a very thorough discussion of the proposed amendments. We voted. There are several dissents on my part.
There are three.
Have been noted, but I acknowledge the will of the majority. What is interesting to me in this response, and only interesting to me, are the bargaining unit comments on number 5, which is yours, Mr. Kazarian, Commissioner Kazarian, and number 8. Because in those instances, we have the bargaining agreements coming forth with a proposed revision. And I would suggest that the areas of conversation would be, and I think we've already moved forward in your conversation with the chair on Rule 5, and whether or not we should continue with that was approved by acclamation at that time, and with number 8, in which the bargaining groups, the 3 or 4 that we have within the city, have raised an issue with respect to the duration of administrative leave, coming forth and asking for 90 days in lieu of what we had proposed, which is an unlimited duration. And those are the areas I think
it's 7 and 8, actually. Those are the...
Yeah, 7 and 8, correct.
7 as well.
7 and 8.
7 and 8.
5, 7, and 8. 5,
So,
7, and 8 are the only ones.
let's
where
do
there's a
this. Let's
change.
vote on each one separately. On number 5, is there any motion to have the commission approve this, any item past 6 months?
I so move.
Move, is there a second?
Yes, I'll second.
There's a second. Could we vote on it, please? Yes.
Before we do that,
Yeah, I'm
I just
sorry.
have a question.
Sure,
If
go
we
ahead.
do that, which is contrary to what the union recommended, what's the next step? Do we go to council, or do you have to go back to the union and get them to say, well, okay, we're okay with it? Or do you have that argument before council?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Devine, my action would be to advise the associations of what was the continuing direction as discussed tonight by this commission, and address that here's how the commission feels on this particular item. If there is a desire for further meet and confer on the subject, I'm bound to continue those discussions. And I would likely give them some form of a deadline to say, here's how the commission feels, and if you want further discussion, and again, I'm obligated to give them notice and deadline, and if they come back and say, you know what, we're okay with this, then that's my cue to continue
If
on.
they're not okay with it, then can you go ahead and take our action to council, and then the union can be there to present their case and let council make the final decision?
Commissioner Devine, that does get a little tricky because it falls into the realm of labor relations under Government Code 3500 and the whole process of meet and confer. Typically, the process is designed not only to have open lines of communication, but also to come to resolution. Given I would say the quality of our employee associations and the good nature, the good relationship we have, I think it would be more likely than not that we can come to agreement on terms on this. My sense when we were meeting and conferring was that no one was going to land on a sword over really any of these items. But I do appreciate certainly their input, and but again, the objective in meet and confer is to come to resolution. And if the bargaining units feel that they're not being heard appropriately, there's a process of declaring impasse and potentially unfair labor practice accusations and things like that. It's taking this civil service process into the labor relations realm, which is kind of the two hats that I wear in my job. So,
Thank you.
I think procedurally, the concern we have is if we go forward, we have our own obligations pursuant to the charter. It's my belief that we can move forward. If we approve all these or make certain modifications, regardless of the position of the employee associations, we could move forward and and direct that these matters be put before the council. I would agree with you, Mr. Examiner, that at a certain point, if in fact these aren't terribly substantive by any means, and I doubt that these would constitute a basis for some sort of administrative action after declaration of an impasse and then exercise of the variety of rights that are incorporated within the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. I just don't see that taking place. Because if we hear what you've said, there's an interpretation that could be that the associations, and God bless them, they're doing what they need to do for their employees. But if we had an employee association that was adamant about one of these, that employee association should not, quite frankly, be given the right to veto what we have considered appropriate adjustments, modifications, and revisions to the association rules. They do not have veto power. They can go forward with a variety of procedures incorporated in their agreements, but I just don't see that they can bar us from moving forward and requiring that this be presented to the council within X number of days as we direct. And again, my conversation is such, I don't think any of this will result in an impasse because there's nothing here in these three in which we have the term, and I appreciate this, recommend. There's nothing that says we oppose. And that's, thank you for using that verb, recommend.
Yes.
Again, Mr. Chair, Commissioner McCarley, I appreciate your thoughts on that. And again, I don't see any of these items, should there be any substantive differences, resulting in any type of impasse or further administrative action. But I do want to indicate that, and I follow labor law in the state of California very closely in the actions of the Public Employment Relations Board. The state of California gives a tremendous amount of discretion to recognized collective bargaining groups. And when you say they don't have a veto power in many respects, they do have significant authority over these matters. And again, it's my job to make sure that we abide by the process as set forth by the government code and
the charter,
the rights of that.
And please understand,
it's two things here. And I mean,
Okay.
we've had in the state of California, we've had items that go before the public for public votes, initiatives that impact labor groups, and that they've been able to successfully sue. And
Yeah, we're not going to discount in any way, shape, or form. GCEA, the Police Association, the Fire Association, we believe that their input in the process is not only important, but it is essential in the manner in which the city runs its business. So let's make that very, very clear.
Chair of Hearing, I just wanted to address Commissioner Kazarian's point with regard to notification, whether that triggers immediate action on the part of the commission. It doesn't trigger immediate action, although it does provide notice. And perhaps if the commission saw a pattern of maybe abuse of authority or...
Now, I want to go with what was actually motion that was put in first and seconded.
Sure.
Can we have a vote on this, please?
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Upcarry?
Yes.
Just to be clear on the vote, was it only on item number 5?
That's only on number 5 right now. We're going to the only ones that are disputed, because all the other ones are approved and the association has approved them. So I don't know why we would go and
Just for the
vote on
sake
those.
of the clarity of the record, when we take it to council, we want to make sure that we have
Right.
a final vote. on
Right, we will
the
have a
commission.
final vote on the rest of the items at the end.
All right.
Yeah.
We would definitely do that. On number 7, my understanding is that the association wants a solid number, a firm number of 30 days. Anyone have any problems with having a 30-day firm? Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, not at all. I just wanted to convey sort of their thoughts on this. Again, if we're talking about number 7 relative to the late evaluations, they thought it would be wise to not leave it open-ended. And
I agree.
think
30
we all
days was the
agree.
number that was floated, and it seems consistent with the recent policy change that we've adopted, which grants a 30-day grace period. So I would wholeheartedly
So we would move to approve
recommend.
to incorporate the amendment?
Move to improve, second?
Second.
Second. Roll call on number 7, please.
Commissioner Menuchyan?
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Perkarian?
Yes, and let's go to number 8. The recommendation is to have a firm number such as 90 days. Mr. Dole, do you have any comments on that?
Again, in a similar vein, Chair Abkarian, I think the safeguard that was discussed, and I believe it was the Management Association that thought of this one. I want to give appropriate credit. And it was just to ensure that these situations are monitored and that, somehow either, that they don't even inadvertently drag on longer than they should. So
Then I would move to incorporate that
Second.
amendment.
Move and second with the amendment on number 8. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Menuchyan?
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Perkarian?
Yes. And on numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, where we had a majority approval on all of them and an approval by the employee bargaining group.
Just a
Yes.
point of order, again, I think at this point you probably want to close the public hearing because you're going to take a vote on the entirety of
I'm
the
sorry.
package.
Okay, we're going to close the public hearing now and
And I move to approve?
move to
Second.
approve. Second. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Menuchyan?
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Perkarian?
Yes. What's next?
Reports?
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, the only report we have is our monthly late performance evaluation, or I'm sorry, past due performance evaluation report. We have, since last month, adopted the new format of reporting. I once again want to thank the Commission and Commissioner Abkarian in particular for recommending these changes. And I want to thank staff for looking at the format of this. It seems a lot clearer and a lot more open-ended. I do want to say this has been shared with our executive team. I advised them about the loss of a few days of the grace period that previously had been granted, and the action of not requiring any department directors to attend until possibly April on the second notices. So they've been forewarned, and as you see, we have just three that would fall into that second notice, and actually, upon seeing this report, 2 of those arrived the same day. So we have really one that would be in that category. But again, that'll be held off until April, the enforcement.
Thank you.
This report, this way, it's much clearer.
Yeah,
Yes.
it gives you specific dates, which makes it easier. What's next?
Reorganization of the Commission.
We have a reorganization. Yes.
Chair, I'd like to nominate Commissioner McCarley as our new chair,
Second?
and I would like to nominate Commissioner Kazarian as our new vice chair.
Second.
Both were named, seconded. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner,
Just sorry, from a process for any other nominations.
Are there any
Sorry.
other nominations? If you have it, I'll kick you out right now. No, I'm just kidding. Any other nominations? Feel free to put out any other nominations.
None.
Okay, they're not hearing any. Could we have roll call on the actual nominations themselves?
Commissioner Menuchyan?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Perkarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
I wanted to thank our chairman,
Distinguished Chairman.
Oh, my God.
Jarian, for running
One thing-
the show for the past year.
The thing I
Thank
don't
you.
do is being a chairman is just being a member of the commission, and there's no difference. We just move seats, so to speak. So give each other, should we move the chairs now?
You don't have to, because we're
No?
almost done.
Okay, we're almost done, so.
Just for adjournment, if you
just-
want me
yeah,
to
really.
solicit a motion for
Roy,
adjournment.
Civil Service Commission, comments?
Yes.
Yes.
I wasn't going to make a comment tonight, however, after the gentleman spoke to us earlier about his concerns, I do want to bring up something that we've discussed at length in the past in terms of our investigative powers. We had reports from staff, from the city attorney's office, and I believe the ultimate conclusion was we do not have investigative powers other than once we're in a hearing. My concern is that, and this arose not too long ago when a member of one of the employees contacted one of our commissioners with a similar type concern. And the commission, that commissioner brought up the subject to the commission, and we kind of said, not kind of, we did say that the employee would have to really address the entire commission with that rather than hear it from a individual commissioner. And at that point, nothing happened. And now we have another case where an employee's come in with a concern, and I got very mixed signals from staff and from our commissioners on whether or not this gentleman or any gentleman in his position has the right to appeal determinations that he's concerned with. So, long story short, I would like to ask, with the concurrence of my colleagues, staff, be it Mr. Doyle or Ms. Farpetian, to bring back a report that concerns the ability and the rights and the legality of a troubled employee or employee that has an issue such as brought up tonight.
This has happened multiple times.
Pardon me?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to clarify this, I don't mean, I apologize, I don't mean, once they finish with their process with the city of Glendale and have gone through the investigation power, and they believe that their job is still in jeopardy, and they believe they're being discriminated against, do they have a right to come in front of us at that point? Is that what you're saying? Because they can't just come and say, we're being discriminated against, I don't want to take it to the city attorney's office, or I don't want to take it to the city manager, I want you guys to investigate it. That we don't have.
No, that we don't have. What I'm saying is that when an employee such as the one we heard earlier today says he went through a process, and he went through the city, ultimately, I guess, through the city manager and through the HR director, and received a response that was not satisfactory. He still had concerns. I want to have somebody come back, somebody meaning
The city attorney's office.
or the HR director, and tell this commission what the rules are for any employee that's faced with a similar type problem, what the rules are in terms of his ability to come and appeal to the commission. We've heard from the city attorney that on certain cases they can, in certain cases they can't. Mr. Abkarian, you've indicated that you felt that they should be able to come back. At this point, I don't know.
Okay.
And I'd like to get that clarified and
agendize it so we can talk about it.
That's
I would agree that we put it on the agenda because it is an area of great interest to me. I have made a couple of comments on the absence of any specific mechanism within our charter, within the city, for investigation of employee grievances that might not fit into the specific rules of our commission. Because our commission is directed to such thing as performance evaluations, pay, promotion, and demotion. Those are actions
And appeals.
and appeal of those specific employee actions where there is, for instance, loss to the employee as a consequence of actions. However, there are a whole bunch, multiplicity of activities. For instance, this particular employee, we don't know anything at this point other than he has come forth with complaints that we respectfully hear, but there should be something within the city, and there are other municipalities that have, whether you call it an inspector general, which is used in several organizations, or you call it an ombudsman, or some sort of neutral authority or body, maybe one person, one or two people within the city who are technically independent, have a certain degree of independence, have the authority to investigate those complaints, and then upon investigation report that to us as the Civil Service Commission. Now this is embarking on a huge change in the manner in which this city has done business over the course of time. All I'm suggesting, I'm going to incorporate what Commissioner Devine has said, that this matter should be agendized so that we can have a robust conversation amongst ourselves as how we see employee relations and the manner of handling employee complaints outside of pure performance and job issues.
Commissioner Gazera, you have 3 minutes.
If I may try and focus for our council,
We're hearing after this one.
if a vested right whether it's pay-related or position-related, is infringed upon, the aggrieved party eventually has the right to appear before us. So I suppose my and this commission's interest, as I hear my colleagues speak, our new chair, is the following. What constitutes sufficient basis? It may not translate into dollars or a position, a promotion, or a demotion, or a termination, but I did not want to say it to the gentleman because I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth and I don't know the facts behind it. Would a hostile working environment that a remedy has been sought, but a remedy has not been deemed to have been given according to the employee, constitute such a right to be free of such a hostile working environment, so as to have that person then, that employee, that civil service employee, have the right to seek redress from this body? That would be one example, perhaps.
And some of these items, we already have a procedure in place. We just don't know, if, that could be a part of the,
Conversation.
absolutely.
Got it.
From staff, because we're in an
Why don't we-
exploratory mode anyway. So again, I concur with my colleagues that in a month or so, we should ask.
Why don't we go a little bit more than a month? Do you mind if we go maybe in April, give Ms. Warpedian
It's
enough
not
time?
that far, that's fine.
Yeah,
To give
just
the office
we would
of
have
the city
enough
attorney
time.
and our examiner, the HR department, an opportunity to outline for us
Okay.
those mechanisms for redress of grievances that are beyond what technically are called vested rights, which are money-oriented issues.
Okay.
I really like that. That's excellent.
Okay, does that satisfy you?
That's
You know
fine,
what
thank
you
you.
need to do, Ms. Ruiz? Okay, perfect. What's next?
Closed session, public
Okay,
employee
we will be
discipline,
going
police
into
officer.
closed session, but we will not be reporting out from the closed session. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations.
Right?